Cool. Hello, everybody. This is weird. I've never actually done an online presentation before. So, hi. I'm Sam Barham. I'm the creative director of a little indie studio called Balancing Monkey Games. We are from Dunedin, New Zealand, right down in the bottom of the world, and coming to you from the future. We have flying cars here. It's awesome. So, a little bit about me. I have been a software developer for 20 years. I've worked in animating children's TV. I've done computer graphics for live sports events. I worked in games for a couple of years, and then the global financial crisis happened to that job. And I've worked as the DevOps architect for an educational website. So I've done like a bunch of stuff, and that sort of turns out to be important later. So things that I'm going to talk about today. So this talk, it's called Turning Luck Your Way. The idea is that releasing an indie game, it takes a lot of luck. There's a lot of stuff that has to go right for the game to work out. But the thing I learned in the journey that I went on to release our game, I should talk about that, I'll do that in a minute, is that there are things you can do to turn luck your way, to make that luck more likely to turn out in your favor. No magic bullets, no guaranteed fixes or anything like that, but things that you can do that it makes it more likely. So the game that we made is called Before We Leave. It's a non-violent city building game. We released it on Epic Store in May. Recently we have made 50,000 sales. So that's just been super crazy amazing. So yeah, that's the game, Before We Leave. Sorry, I feel like I'm a bit scattered, but anyway, that's life. And so the first thing I'm going to talk about is I'm going to go through the story of the development of the game, and what happened, what we did, that kind of thing, and then I'll talk a bit about the sort of the things that I learned, the big things that you can do to try and help the luck needed to turn your way a bit. And before I do that, one thing that I do need to acknowledge is my privilege. I am a cis, heterosexual, middle-aged white man in a relatively wealthy country. I got the genetic lottery on my way. So unfortunately, some of the things that I talk about, they may not apply to you, and that sucks. It's not how the world should be, but it's how the world is. But a lot of what I talk about, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your background is. You can still hopefully take things from this talk and do them, and they will help you find success in your journey too, which would be cool because we need more voices out there making cool games. So the story of my indie game career so far. Career sounds funny, it's only a couple of years, but whatever. So in it was 2018 or so, my wife finished doing her master's in psychology. So for a couple of years she'd been locked away in the study at our house every minute she could spare writing her thesis. And the deal was, that was cool, but after she finished that, it was my turn. And I'd always tinkered with games, and I'd worked in games for a couple of years. That job was largely work for hire for other businesses, doing games for them. So we weren't releasing our own games, we were helping other people make games, which is still cool, good fun. But anyway, I started making a game as a hobby. Started learning Unity, started coming up with ideas. So I started working on a prototype of a game, and was like, yeah, no, this is too big. I'm just learning Unity. I've got no idea what I'm doing. So I dropped that one. Started on a second prototype, which I quite liked. I thought it was pretty cool. It was kind of sort of like Civilization, but sped up, on a rotating 3D planet. but I had like some friends playing it, and the feedback was, yeah, it's all right. So eventually I was like, okay, I need to listen to what they're saying. Yeah, it's all right. It's not the game that's going to succeed. So I pivoted again, reused a lot of the tech that I built for that game, and went on to make what I called Before, which became Before We Leave. And so that's how it started out. So Before We Leave, I started developing in January of 2019. And yeah, as I say, just as a hobby, doing it in my evenings and my weekends around family stuff and life and full-time job and all that sort of thing. And then the first big thing, and the thing that probably set the rest of my journey the most, was in New Zealand we have the NZGDC Game Development Conference, and as part of that they have a thing called Kiwi Game Starter. So that is a competition for people who are just starting out in games, little hobby indies or whatever. And you submit your game, and the winner gets some thousands of dollars to help them make the game. And the first year I entered it, I was a finalist, one of 4 finalists. I didn't win that year. I actually won the next year, which was super cool. So I won. I'm wondering if I can get my timeline wrong. No, that was 2018 I started, idiot. So 2018 I entered Kiwi Game Starter for the first time. And the woman who won, she totally deserved. She'd been a finalist 3 years running. Her game is called 10,000 Coins. You should totally go and check that out too, because it's pretty cool. But anyway, I was a finalist in the Kiwi Game Starter, which was amazing by itself. But there were 2 things that came out of that. The first one was to submit to it. You didn't just submit a build of your game. You also had to submit a marketing plan and a budget, and you had to analyze other games in the genre. So I had to go through and find other games that were like mine. I had to say, how many are they selling? Why? What's similar? What's different? Why are they successful? Why are they not successful? That kind of thing. And I had to come up with a budget, and I had to have some kind of an idea of what marketing I was going to do. And that was very, very helpful for my journey, because I did my best shot, and the budget was horrendously wrong because I had no clue. But it revealed to me all of the things that you have to do for a game to be successful, to have any chance at all. And so I was like, okay, there's all this stuff that's not making a game that you have to do, and I'm like, I have no idea how to do this. I'm going to have to learn it. So what I did was, I was like, okay, because I was like, I'm doing this for a hobby, but really I'd like this to be my day job. I'd like to turn this into something. So I want to do it properly. And so I had a look around for how can I learn this stuff. And at around about that same time, there was a guy called Gabriel dos Santos who ran a conference called Pro Indie Dev. And that was a bunch of successful indie developers, the big names of the indie world, talking about, not about how to make games, how to do graphics, how to write a story, but how to do the business, how to be professional, how to make games repeatedly that weren't like a one-hit wonder and then you vanish. And that taught me so much about all of that stuff that I didn't know. I didn't even know I didn't know it. I didn't know that I had to know it. And so that's a big thing, is learn all of this stuff. So from there, the next big thing that happened was, out of entering this competition, out of putting my game out there in the public eye, and it looked awful. It was all prefab assets and prototype and all the rest of it. Someone came along to me and said, hey, do you want me to fund you to make your game? And I initially thought he meant, I'll give you a couple of $1,000s to help out with some art assets. But no, it was a bunch of money so that I could work full-time for a year and bring in an artist and bring in someone to do PR and stuff. And I mean, obviously that is just super lucky. This New Zealand game developer who'd been successful and was the kind of guy who wanted to pay that forward and help other people out. But the reason he came to me is he saw my game in the competition. He could tell from what he saw of it that it was a game that had a chance because I'd put the work in, thinking about how do I make this game work in reality, not just in my computer. I had comments from judges like, I was so glad that you had a tutorial in your game, and I was so glad that you did, one of the reasons I got to be a finalist was I bothered to do all of this paperwork properly. And I wasn't like, yay, the $10,000 I will win for this will fund development for the rest of time. I realized that that was a drop in the bucket of what was needed to actually make a game. So yeah, he funded me, which was just nuts. I went on to quit my job in December of 2018, and yeah, started working from home. I'd never worked from home. I'd always worked for the man. I'd always worked for a company. So working from home was like, oh, I don't know about this. This is, going to be on my own all day. That's going to be weird. So one of the things I did to help with that, actually, I started on a New Zealand game development Slack. I started a daily agile style stand-up of other hobby developers and indie developers, just keeping each other on track. How are you going? What are you doing today? That kind of thing. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, that happened. And then fast forward a bit. So in June, July of 2019, we were going to announce the game. It was time to tell the public about my great thing that I've been making. And I knew from everything I'd learned that this was going to be a pivotal moment. It had to excite people. It had to be a bit of a splash. So there were really three things we did. First one is I found someone to help me with PR, because I'm not a PR guy. I am an introvert. I am not interested in engaging with people like that. I had no idea who to contact. I didn't have the list to email or anything like that. So again, luck. I found a guy on the internet who was like, hey, I've decided to go and do freelance indie PR for games. So I was like, cool, let's work with that guy. He turned out to be good, which is not always the case. But there are people out there that can do these things for you. I had to pay him, of course, but he wasn't super expensive. And that was an amazing experience, talking with someone who had a clue about the selling of games, the marketing of games. So he was really helpful in helping me to, again, refine my game away from here's this thing I'm making as a hobby to here's the thing people actually pay money for. So if you're your standard indie game developer in your bedroom or whatever, if you've got any money at all, find someone who can help you with PR. If you don't have any money, try and find a mate or something, or do it yourself. It's possible. I didn't want to. So the second thing that we worked on, of course, was a trailer. We had to have an announcement trailer. And trailers, you got to think about them really, really carefully, because you have 5 seconds. That's it, 5 seconds. In 5 seconds, either someone has switched off and moved on to the next thing, or they're like, yeah, this is cool, I'll keep watching. And then if they keep watching after 5 seconds, you've got 10 seconds. That's it. After 10 seconds, if you're not interesting them, then they'll switch off and go on to something else. They won't watch the rest of your trailer. So if you're making a trailer and you're leading with your in-depth lore about Grogburk the Burly and how he invaded Sneeblyville in 1,000 years ago and the rest of it, nah, stop, don't bother, give up, go home. It's just a waste of time. You've got to excite people. You've got to engage people. You've got to get people like, okay, I'm interested. I want to keep going. And the other thing you have to do, of course, is at the end, you have to have a call to action. You have to be like, you like this video? Sweet. Here's what you do. And you have to have one. Not like, if you like this game, go and wishlist it and join the Discord and no, one thing that they need to do. And so the one thing for me, because I wasn't yet, I didn't have Did I have a Steam page up? I can't remember now. But anyway, the one thing I wanted was for them to go to join the community. Because, so this is something I learned from a GDC talk by Mike Rose. So this is super important. It used to be that if you wanted your game to be a success, the most important thing was to be in the press, in the websites or in the magazines if you're really old. And that was it. That was how you sold your game. And that still matters a little bit, but nowhere near as much as it used to. And then the thing that then was like the big thing, the thing you had to do was you had to be getting played by the YouTubers. And then later on, it's like you have to be getting played by the streamers. And that, you know, that was the big thing. And that still matters. That still matters a lot. It's a big help if streamers and YouTubers are playing your game. But it's not the most important thing anymore. The most important thing is you need to have a community. You need to have a growing, excited community who want to play your game, that are interested about your game. And so I was like, cool, okay, that's what I need to do. So I made a Discord channel. I had a Discord server, sorry, already, with like 20 people on it, friends and stuff. And the other piece of advice I got from that talk is when people come to your Discord server, give them something to do. So I found a guy, he was super cheap, he makes Discord bots. And I said, hey, can you make an idle game for my Discord server? So this game, it was kind of like an idle text-based version of what Before We Leave was going to be. You used commands and channels to build buildings, and those buildings generated resources, and you can use those resources to build more buildings. So as soon as the announcement went out, and because I had this PR guy who knew what he was doing and he had the list of who to email, we had articles in Kotaku and Rock Paper Shotgun and PC Gamer and all the rest of it. And then, so that was a big boost. Everyone, all these websites were saying, hey, here's this cool new game. And we had an announcement trailer that was cool, and it was punchy at the start, and it got people engaged, and people watched it. And all of that was saying, come to the Discord server. And you come to the Discord server, it's like, here's an idle game. Here's a game that gives you a reason to come back every day. That gives you a reason to become part of this community and not just like visit and go, oh yeah, okay, it's a community, whatever, I've got 50 of those, I'll leave again. But to keep coming back. So, don't like take that as the gospel, I must have an idle game in my server. It's not that at all. Some of the other examples were that Mike Rose talked about for Descenders. The first thing you did on the Discord before you could basically engage with anything is you had to choose a team. And you had no idea who these teams were, it was just pick a team. And as soon as you'd done that, the rest of the server opened up to you, the channels were all unlocked. And then they'd have all sorts of competitions between the teams, art competitions or, I don't know, whatever. And again, that gave people a reason to come back to the server and get engaged in the community. So that was a journey, getting to that point. And then after that, I never actually asked, so I don't know for sure, but I assume because of the announcement, because we made a splash, because we did the work of making a trailer, and the trailer took months of back and forth and refining. And because we had this community that people could see and it was growing, I got contacted by some publishers. A few publishers came along and like, hey, do you want us to publish a game for you? And some of them, I was like, I have never heard of you. Why would I ever engage with you in the first place? And some of them were like, oh, cool, that's a name I've heard of. That's really cool. And I started a conversation with them. And also the Epic Game Store came along and said, hey, do you want to publish your game on, or release your game on Epic Game Store? And of course, as I said at the start of the talk, I ended up going with Epic. So it was sort of a balance of things. Obviously, I had concerns. This was, not long before that, whatever it was, Ooblets, was that the name? Had been absolutely eviscerated in social media for going with Epic. And people were still like, Epic is a bit gross or whatever. But I didn't want that to be a problem for my game, for little old me. But at the same time, there were two huge things. The first one was they offered us a guaranteed minimum income. So it's like, your game is exclusive on Epic for a while, and it doesn't matter how many units it sells, we'll still pay you at least X. And for me, in New Zealand, first-time game developer with 3 kids and a mortgage as well, is like, that means, from my point of view, my game would be financially successful straight away, which was enormous. And the other thing, which you could almost look at as a downside, but was sort of turned into a plus size, is there's a bunch of stuff that if you go with a publisher, they do for you. So they do all the advertising, they do all the PR, they do all the marketing, they do all the coordination of QA. It depends on the publisher and the deal you have with them. They do all sorts of stuff. And one of the people advising me was like, if you go with a publisher, they'll do all that for you, and then you'll have no idea what goes into it. And so if you come to make a next game, you'll be like, I'm stuck. I don't want to learn all that stuff. I'm going to have to go with a publisher again. Whereas if I go with Epic, first time I learn all this stuff. I have to do all this stuff, or at least coordinate the stuff and find people to do this stuff for me. So I learn all of that, and then for the next game, I'm in a position of going, okay, was that okay, and I can do it again, or was that the worst thing ever, and I wanted to find someone to do it for me. So again, it was all about learning how to do the stuff I don't want to do. So yeah, we went with Epic, and the grumbling about us changing to Epic was actually tiny. I think there were 2 reasons for that. One was we hadn't given out Steam keys. We hadn't done any kind of pre-release giveaway or anything, so no one, apart from a few people that were helping test the alpha of the game, no one had access to it on Steam. So there was no loss to anyone for us shifting. And the other one is we've been very, very careful with our Discord community, to make sure it was nice. Basically, we had a big, heavy ban hammer. And if people turned up and were swearing or being jerks, it's like, gone, not interested, go away. Which meant we didn't have jerks on the server to make noise because it's funny or whatever. So yeah, it actually worked out really well. And they advanced us some money, which meant I could bring on a second programmer and a community manager, and things grew from there. So that was in late 2019, and then in fast forward 6 months, more work, we released the game in May, which was crazy. Apart from about 2 weeks where the final UI got delivered shortly before release, I didn't crunch. Those 2 weeks were 16-hour days. I don't recommend it, but sometimes it has to be done. My other programmer didn't crunch. That was just me because I own the game, so I have to do the stupid work. And then yeah, we released a game. I mean, releasing a game in the first place is nuts. Releasing a game a few weeks after New Zealand's first COVID-19 lockdown was mental, but we got there. And we actually got really, really lucky again. We released a week before Epic's big mid-year sale. So, we had our release spike of games, and then the copies sold went up again because it was on sale, or there was a discount voucher you could use or whatever. So that was crazy cool timing. One thing to add there. I originally was thinking of releasing it in October, before Epic came along. I was going to release it in October of 29, simply because the money was going to run out from the guy funding me. Do not release a game between October and January. Just don't. There's just no point. Between giant games coming out for the Christmas holiday season and lots of non-gaming reasons that people aren't interested, they've got to buy Christmas presents and they're on holiday and all sorts of stuff, you're going to fail. Just don't do it. Don't release between October and January. There you go, helpful piece of thing. And so after that, the journey of the last 7 months, it's been bug fixing, and then we've just been releasing content updates, free updates, every 6 to 8 weeks, everything from submarines to new island biomes to explore, and secret things and bug fixes and feedback from the community and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and now here I am talking to you, pretending I have a clue. So yeah, it happened. You can do it too. Yes, Viroid Games, could you share the info of that Discord bot guy? Yes, I can. His handle on Discord and on Twitter is Torcado, Torcado. I don't know exactly what he makes his own games and stuff, but yeah, he's super great guy. Excellent to work with. Highly recommend him. Cool. So the next thing that I was going to talk about is what I learned, and kind of the big ticket items of what you need to do if you're going to try and make all the luck that turned my way turn your way too. And I mean, a lot of it is basically a summary of certain things that I've already talked about. So the first thing is you need to analyze other games in your market. Don't pretend that someone else hasn't already done what you're doing. So things like, how many games are there in your genre? If there's millions and millions and millions of games in similar games, then the market's going to be too crowded. You're not going to stick out. You're not going to make any sales. You're going to fail. Similarly, if your genre is too niche, there may simply not be enough people buying games like yours to have any chance of success. Now, I realize I'm sounding pretty harsh here. If you want to make a game as a hobby, and it's just a thing you do for fun, then that is cool. Do it. But don't listen to my drivel. It's got nothing to do with what I'm talking about. This is about, if you want your game to sell, if you want to make a living off this, these are the things that you need to do. And yeah, so that's life. Second thing to analyze is how many copies do these games sell? Go on Steam Spy, buy access to Steam Spy. It's not as accurate as you used to be because the Steam API changed, but it's still a massive wealth of information. And don't just go, oh, look, there's a game in this genre that sold 1 million copies. Think about why. That game like in my genre, there's the Anno series, Anno 1404, Anno 2070, 100, whatever. Now, of course, they sell millions of copies. They're made by Ubisoft or whatever. They're huge. They've got thousands of people. So, I analysed their sales, but I also analysed the sales of Kingdoms and Castles, which was made by 2 people, and I looked at a bunch of others. And so, another thing, part of that you need to think about is how many people does it make a game in this genre? If your dream game that you're working on is a MMORPG and there's 1 of you, stop. Don't make something else. It's just not going to work. Whereas if your dream game that you're working on is a little indie platformer, then cool. Lots of people do those solo. It's going to work out. It's a crowded market, so that you got that problem. But anyway, and another thing to analyze is who plays these games. I've seen advice of literally take a photo that looks like the kind of person that plays your game and stick it on the wall. And if you're trying to decide, and give them a name, give them a bio, who are they, what age are they, what are they interested in, what do they do? And if you're trying to decide if a feature is going to be a good idea for your game, look at the picture. You go, now, would Henry or Gail or whatever like this feature? Would it work for them? I didn't do that because I didn't want some random picture staring at me while I worked, but I sort of tried to engage with the idea. So yeah, you got to know other games in your genre. You got to know what they do and don't do and why, and you got to try and come up with your best version of why. One mistake I made that I got told off for in the Kiwi Game Starter presentation, you had to do a presentation to judges as well. Steam Spy tells you about the sales on Steam. It doesn't tell you about physical sales. It doesn't tell you about sales on other stores. So, for example, my analysis of Anno 1404 was a bit flawed because, of course, they made a whole bunch of sales on physical, and that wasn't in my sales thing, and yeah, I looked a little silly. So the second thing that you have to do a budget. Even if you're working for free, there are other things that you're going to need. Even if you're working for free and can code and can do art, I can't do art. You do not want to see my art. There's still marketing and PR and testing and music and sound. And even, hopefully you can find friends who will do these things for you for free as part of your team or for mates rates or whatever. But be realistic. You're going to have to pay for some things, and try and be realistic about what they're going to cost. A lot of places have funding, whether it's prizes or like development funds you can apply for or whatever, that will help you out with that sort of thing. But if you can come to someone and say, I've done a budget, it's going to cost me this much, you can see that I've thought through everything, then you're far more likely to actually get some money than, can I have some money, please, because I need some? Yep, no one's going to be interested. So third thing, of course, is marketing, like I've said. I've heard stories through various people of people turning up to a marketing guy I know saying, I've made this game, help me market it. No, you need to think about marketing right from the start, right from when you're thinking about what kind of a game am I going to make. Now that may sound ultimately dull and boring, and yeah, it kind of is. But marketing, we're talking about how is your game going to sell? What are the interesting things that I need to show off? What's interesting about my game? What's unique about my game? Why would someone pay me money for this thing I'm making? And that, I mean that in a positive way. What's cool? What's awesome? Think about those things, build those things, know those things, be able to talk to people about the cool parts of your game. If there are things that you think are cool, but aren't necessarily going to be easy to show someone, then don't cut them out, but just, be realistic about that. Maybe that's something that you don't put in your trailer, but you tell people about once they've sort of got to the point of being in your community and being interested in the basics, and then you go, and we've also got 10,000 years of written lore or complicated game systems that don't translate well to a 5-second pitch or whatever. And the last thing, of course, is community. Like I've said, these days, and I mean it may change. These things go through cycles, but at the moment you've got to have a community. You've got to be building a community. Think about that. Where is your community going to be? Is it going to be Discord? Is it going to be Reddit? Is it going to be somewhere else? What are the sort of people who play your game going to be interested in? Why would they come to your community? It might be an idle game. It might be a trash talking competition. I don't know. It might be making fan art. It could be all kinds of things. And even if, like me, you're a little introvert who would be quite happy to never talk to anyone, you've got to be there. You've got to be personable. It's not that hard, especially in text, to be chatty with people. So you can do it. And yeah, so I mean, the last thing I was going to say, like I've already kind of said, is a little bit of tough love. If you're not willing to engage with this kind of stuff, keep your game as a hobby. Enjoy making your game. Enjoy the feeling of creating something. I love building things, and they're not for anyone else. They're just for me. I build model ships and working clocks made out of paper and stuff. And I'm never going to try and sell those because I'm not that good at them, but I enjoy it. And same for this.
Would you like to answer a couple questions here, Sam? We got a couple.
Absolutely. So that's me. I've done my talk, and now questions.
Yeah. Questions. Okay. Well, you can keep talking. I mean, because when we get some questions here, Nightwolf, should you work more on getting your game to sit with other games on their virtual Steam shelf, or work more on community, social, and influencers? If your game has a small genre group on Steam, or is in a category where it could get buried, which is more important? And does having / getting a publisher change what you do in this situation?
Ooh, there's a lot. Can you leave the text up? Because otherwise I'll forget. And cool, thank you. So there's a bunch of questions. So I think Steam, the biggest thing for Steam is their algorithm, honestly, as I understand it. And the biggest thing for their algorithm is things like wish lists and community engagement. So more or less, if you work on your community and your social and your influences, but part of your call to action from those things is, and go to wish list on Steam or whatever, then that will start building into the Steam algorithm, which is going to help. It's super important that your artwork on Steam, for example, is going to stick out, but not too much. So look at other games that you're going to be sitting next to and make sure that your little capsule image is different and stuff. Getting a publisher, now be careful with external companies, be careful with marketing companies and PR companies and publishers. Some of them will say they will do stuff and then actually not. Be very, very careful with that. But if you get a publisher and they're good, then they're going to do a bunch of that stuff for you, and you can more or less be guided by them and concentrate on just making a game. You've got to keep on top of what they're doing and make sure they're doing it and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean, ideally, if you have a publisher, then they'll take care of all of that stuff you asked about and you won't need to worry about it if they're good. So I hope that answers the questions.
Okay, let's see. Here we got from Samori on Twitch. Concerning marketing versus exposure, would it be better to focus on one platform and market it like crazy, or focus on getting the game up on as many storefronts as possible, even if it means that marketing may suffer?
Oh, I just saw an article by whatever his name is that makes the democracy games. They're political simulators. And he said in order to be resilient, his games are on all the stores. It's a PC game, so it's only on PC stores, but it's on all of them. It's on Steam and Epic and Green Man and Humble and everything. But I think probably if you're just starting out, I would concentrate on one store personally, because you've only got so much bandwidth. You may not have any fans yet who are going to hunt it down in a bunch of stores. So I'd be like, here's one place, go here. This is where my game is, because then all of your marketing funnels into one place and you've got one call to action that's not going to confuse the consumer. So yeah, I'd go for exposure, going to one place rather than trying to spread your eggs.
I'll break in on that as well, because I can answer some of that. I know, because I work for a PR company. I work for Vicarious PR, and one of the things that is recommended is to not put them all up on all the platforms at once, because if you release on Steam and then later on released on Xbox or whatever, that's a whole that's another marketing round, and it also brings more players back to Steam as well, because they're like, oh, this is on Xbox, now it's on Steam. So each time you release on a different platform, that is another marketing round for everything.
Yep.
But really, it depends on your game, on the situation, on how much money you have. I mean, there's a lot of things depending. Yep. Okay, here we go. From Dentus. Do you prefer to imagine the common player or the super excited player when thinking about building?
You kind of got to think about both. So we've got some people who are super into the game, and we had some competitions on the Discord server of first person to launch a spaceship, or we added in a thing that counts how many actions you take in the game. Try and get to the first island on the game with as few actions as possible. And they spent so much time optimizing, getting to win these. All it was a different color for your name on Discord. So you've got to think about people like that, because they are the people who will market your game for you. They're the people who talk to their friends and say, hey, I'm really enjoying this game, you should play it too. But at the same time, if you're only thinking about get them, you're going to have an audience of 5 people, because your game just caters to those. You've also got to think about, if someone who's not really invested comes and plays this game, what's the experience they're going to have? What are the things that are hard to learn? What are the things that are obtuse and don't need to be? And smooth as many rough edges as you can, because you want as many people as you can to engage with your game, because that builds your community, that builds your word of mouth, that leads to more people coming in if your game is, as much as possible, smooth and easy to play. And that doesn't mean it can't be a super hard, punishing kind of a game. That's part of the charm of games like that. But still, the rough edges, the annoying bits, are smoothed off of those.
Okay, let's see here. From Octo, what are some of the best competitions to enter for both exposure and practice?
Whichever one applies to your country. So I think for practice, the advice I've seen is game jams. Game jams. Do all the game jams. I've only done one because I was kind of already in the process of making this game and knew what I wanted it to be. But if you're wanting to practice making games, do all the game jams. If you're wanting to enter a competition in the hopes of funding and exposure, I have no idea. It's going to be, look in your city, your country. New Zealand is like 5 million people, so in order for anything to happen, it needs to be in the whole country. Whereas if you're in New York, I imagine there's these sorts of things going on just for the city. But yeah, anything you can do like that that's going to get your game in front of other game developers, and therefore hopefully in front of interested funding parties. So yeah, I don't know. Do your research, find out what's around you, is the best I can think of there, sorry.
Those are all good questions. Angel Star Studio says, I made the mistake of that and put it on everything all at the same time. I agree, it's best in stages.
Yeah.
Look, we still have about 8-9 minutes left. So if there's anything else you'd like to cover, or if anyone has any questions, let's get them up in chat. Or anything else that you'd like to talk. Let's talk about your desk.
Which desk? That desk?
Your desk right there. Yeah. What do you got going on right there?
Oh, so I've got a standing desk because I sit too much and my back is like, no, don't sit, you stupid person. But that one I bought earlier, it's a hydraulic standing desk and it sucks, so I got a new one. But pretty much this is all the design pads for scribbling stuff on. My wife used to work at a medical center. She's since joined this company as our managing director, which is super cool. So I've got a bunch of doctors' pads, which is an example of really weird marketing, because doctors cannot use these because they cannot write stuff down that their next patient will see. So they get given these pads and they're like, we can't use these. Why are you giving them to us? So I've got a bunch.
And it's free drawing paper, right?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's great. Free drawing paper is great.
Right. I've got a standing desk too. And I like it. It goes up and down. I mean, Oh, here we go. We got a question from Jesse TG on Twitch. When is a good time for a solo developer to start preparing their pitch materials for their second game?
Oh, okay. I'll answer that one once I've done it, because I don't know. So our plans at the moment are built around the fact that we're exclusive on Epic, and eventually we'll be able to go on Steam. So at the moment we've been, working on updating our game, and for the next while the focus is going to be on, preparing to go on Steam. And then, I mean, we haven't planned it in detail, but after that it'll be like, okay, time for the next game. But yeah, when it's kind of, you have to play it by ear, and it comes down to money. How long is your second game going to take? How much is it going to cost? Do you have that much money in the bank? to survive for long enough. Oh, that's an important thing. Stores pay out like 2 months after you earn the money. So if you're in the situation of like having a little studio, having some money, you know, paying things, or even if you're just paying yourself, be aware that it's going to be like 2 months after you release the game before you actually get any money. I ended up having to borrow some money from someone just in order to pay myself. And
so make sure and stock up on ramen. Go to Costco, get the big boxes of top ramen.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to starve your children, so I couldn't just do that.
All right, we got another question from Mr. Kooky. I've heard from a couple of devs who say that whenever you get funding, don't quit your day job. How do you feel about the switch from our 9 to 5 to becoming a dev, and does it vary?
I imagine it varies a heap. So for yes, frowned upon. So I mean, it depends on the funding you get. Like if the funding was winning, you know, the competition that I won, the prize money was $25,000, which is very nice and great, and that would have paid my salary for a few months, and nothing else, right? And so if I'd quit my day job on that, that would have been suicide. Whereas, you know, the funding I got, because it was super generous, it was enough that I knew I could live for a year and also hire an artist and stuff. I had to take like a 30% pay cut, but luckily we were overpaying our mortgage, so we could just go, okay, now our mortgage will take forever to pay off, and we're, you know, could now afford to live off what I was going to get from the marketing, from the investment deal. But I mean, yeah, it depends on money. It depends on how much money you're getting if you're getting funding. And that's where, you know, having a budget, being realistic, being able to say, okay, that's a really nice amount of money and it's going to help me get professional art and professional sound, but it's not enough to live off, so I'm going to have to keep my 9 to 5. Or being able to go, okay, that is enough money that I can actually live off it for a reasonable period of time. And I've done the planning and I know how long my game is theoretically going to take, and it's, you know, I can survive for long enough. So yeah, it comes down to how much, which, you know, I see games as art, and I don't like sort of being like all mercenary and it's all about the money. But in the end, you've got to eat, even if it's ramen.
Okay, well, we've got time for a few more questions, and there are a few more. I'm going to go backwards real quick. Angel Star Studios says, you mentioned game jams are a good way to get exposure. We're new to it, but I've noticed spikes in our Steam wish lists when we do this. The problem is you can only enter game jams if you just started the game. So would we only be able to do that at the beginning of development? The answer, game jams are, you're supposed to, when the time starts, that's when you start your game, right? You can't already have a game that's already you've been working on and do it, because the whole point is to make a game within 72 hours or a month or whatever, depending on that.
No, I think the good things, game jams are good for two things. They're good for practicing making games. You know, I entered a game jam, and I think in my case it was 24 hours because I tried doing something and hated it and pivoted. I made a game, and it was not unfun. That was good practice. And the other thing is, if you do enter game jams, often they're sort of a little bit of a competition. And if you win, you're not going to win money or anything, but you'll win marketing for you. So people that are looking for, you know, other people to work with or people to fund or whatever are slightly more likely to notice you if you're doing game jams and doing them well. So it's not about exposure for your game, it's about exposure for you.
Right. Okay. We probably have time for one more. Port Luca on Twitch says, have you been approached by any larger companies to work for them, or do you plan/want to stay indie?
I have not been approached by anyone else wanting me to work for them. You get people coming along saying, hey, do you want service XYZ? You know, do you want QA? Do you want publishing? Whatever. I plan to stay indie. The largest place I've ever worked was like 200 people all around the world. So, you know, I've never worked for a big place, no interest in doing it. I think if I wasn't able to basically stay indie, I'd probably quit and get a day job, something else, rather than working for a giant company. But never say never. Who knows what the future holds?
Yeah, who knows? Exactly, because someone might say, "Here's a bunch of money, and you get all the freedom, and you get all these things," and you might go, "Well, I might want to do something different." It looks like Jay has a question that he really wants answered. So it's from the Discord. How do you know when to stop adding features and just get ready to ship it? Oh, I see so many developers keep going on and on and on. Oh, well, now that I'm good at animating, I got to reanimate everything. Oh, now that I'm better at artwork, and the game just keeps going and going and going and going.
Games are never finished. You are never going to finish your game. It is never going to be done. You need to come up with a plan. You need to have an idea of what you want it to be. You need to go, okay, I have more or less achieved my plan, and it's not quite right, but it's good enough, so damn it, I'm releasing it. Releasing a game is a whole different skill set that you need to learn. Like the actual process of finishing and releasing, it is not the same skill set as making the game, and you need to learn that as a whole separate skill set. So, I mean, the best I can think of off the top of my head is like, come up with a plan of what you want your game to be, make that, and unless you're getting feedback from your players saying this is not fun, don't keep adding to it just because it would be cool. Be like, I have made the thing I planned. Yes, I could make it better, but it's good enough, so I'm going to release it. And then you do post-release content.
Yeah, that makes sense. Otherwise, or you can get feature creep, and then it just goes on and on and on. And honestly, most developers, and I mean most, like 90% of game developers, never actually ever finish and release a game. They will just like make a game and I want to make something else and then go on. And like if you're trying to get work or something, finishing a game, even if it's a crappy game, having it finished and released is a super important thing, right?
Yeah.
So Jay says, Jay wants me to keep going with some questions. So let me scroll back up here because I know that there was one that I missed. Do you have any, this is from Octo. Do you have any suggestions with how to network during a stay-at-home COVID environment? Online.
I mean, yeah, online conferences, stuff like this.
Discord.
Yeah. I mean, I don't network much because it's just not me. But yeah, I mean, do what you can. Online conferences, yeah.
Talk to people. Let's see here. Nightwolf says regarding game jams, can you make a franchise out of a game jams that then get posted on itch.io and then possibly rework them, reuse parts of them into full games for Steam or Epic Games with full relation to the original game jam games?
I guess. I mean, pay attention to terms. It may be that your game is in some fashion owned by the game jam or something. Unlikely, but just pay attention to that kind of stuff. There are lots of games out there that have like an original free version on itch.io, and then they reworked it into something better and released it as a real game, as a paid game. So that's totally a thing that you can do. You do need to be careful of sort of the demo effect, where there's a lot of argument about whether demos are a good idea or a bad idea. Because like if you've got a paid game and if you're trying to release that and it's basically the free game, then why would people pay money for it? They'll just go and do the free game. The paid game needs to offer something compelling more that's worth the amount of money you're asking for it. But yeah, totally, make a game jam game, and if you think it's cool, keep going, make it better and sell it. Lots of people do that, and it's a totally awesome way to do things.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have done exactly that. They'll make a game, make it better or rework it and then commercialize it or whatever. Okay, here we go. This will be the last one. Yeah, that one is a bot up there, Mr. Cookie. We're gonna have to ban that thing at some point in time. How far should your game be in development before you begin to focus on community building, or is it something that should be done the moment the development starts?
There's no point building a community around a game that you haven't announced. And you should announce a game when you're ready to. So if you announce your game too early, then you won't have anything interesting to show, or what you show will be too early. And also people are like, oh, that looks cool, and then they'll forget about you over the next 2 or 3 years as you make the game. If you announce your game too late, then of course you don't have enough time to do the marketing and the community building and stuff. So if you go back and watch my announcement trailer, it looks a million times worse than what we actually released, because the second programmer that I brought on was really good with like shaders, and he was a trained photographer and stuff, so he was able to really boost the look of the game. But yeah, I mean, that's it. You need your announcement to make as much of a splash as you can. So concentrate on that. And when you make that announcement, you need to be ready to be building your community from then. But there's no point before that. And there's no point starting after it. You need to start building your community at that point and go from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So do you have any final thoughts or anything? Are you going to be in the Discord here for a little bit? If anybody else wants
yeah. I'll poke around in the Discord for a bit and answer any questions that pop up in the post-session chat channel.
Yeah, the post-session chat. It's discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. And the last session of the day is coming up. Let's see who it is. This
cool.
Will be where are we at here? We are at right here. Your pitch is fine. Your delivery is not. And that's with Jason Wishnov. That'll be interesting.
Cool. All right. See you, everybody. Have a great life. Sam.